Buck never imagined that the quiet rhythm of his solitary life, a life spent tending to his fields, listening to the whisper of the wind through the cornstalks, and feeling the earth beneath his calloused hands, could be shattered by the arrival of a stranger. In the soft twilight, when the sky was a canvas of dusky purples and lingering oranges, his routine was forever altered. The sound of splintering wood and the frantic scramble of hooves tore through the silence of his farm, heralding a moment of irrevocable change. Amidst the chaos, Buck found himself face to face with Zurich, a man whose eyes bore the deep scars of battles fought and losses endured. In those eyes, Buck recognized not just the pain of a wounded soldier, but a soul burdened with the memories of unhealed wounds, both physical and emotional. In that harrowing moment, with blood seeping into the furrows of his cherished land, Buck's heart pounded not merely with fear, but with a fierce resolve that would come to define the rest of his existence. Zurich, the enemy now desperate and bleeding on his doorstep, lay there not by choice but by the cruel twist of fate. His presence was an unwelcome intrusion into the sanctity of Buck's isolated world, a world where every breath was measured and every decision deliberate. Yet beneath the shock and uncertainty, a dormant ember of compassion was ignited within Buck, urging him to act. It was as if fate had arranged this encounter to force him into a choice that transcended mere survival. It was a summons to a higher calling, an invitation to stand against a relentless tide of oppression. The dark silhouettes of Dominion soldiers soon emerged on the horizon, their presence a grim promise of the storm to come. They advanced with a cold efficiency, each step echoing the harsh decree of authority. Surrender the fugitive Zurich or watch everything crumble under the weight of their might. The soldiers' ultimatum carried with it a venomous blend of threat and inevitability. It was not merely a demand for compliance, but a stark declaration that the world was at a tipping point, a world where the comfort of routine was about to be obliterated by the inexorable force of tyranny. The chill of their words seeped into Buck's bones, igniting a profound internal struggle. He knew that the life he had so painstakingly built was about to be sacrificed on the altar of uncompromising power. Driven by an inner conviction that the sanctity of human decency must never be surrendered, Buck made his choice. The decision to shelter Zurich was not born of naivety or reckless abandon. It was the culmination of years spent nurturing a quiet dignity in a world that had long since forgotten the value of compassion. In choosing to help the wounded stranger, Buck stepped into a maelstrom of conflict, a conflict that was as much about the survival of his own spirit as it was about defying an oppressive regime. Every heartbeat, every inhalation of the cool night air, was now imbued with the weight of irreversible choices. The familiar landscape of his farm, once a symbol of life and promise, transformed into a battleground where every blade of grass whispered the possibility of rebellion. As the Dominion's forces closed in, their presence transforming the pastoral scene into one of impending doom. Buck's mind raced with memories of better days, days when the simple pleasures of life reigned supreme, untainted by the specter of war. He recalled evenings spent in quiet conversation with his late father, whose eyes had always shone with quiet wisdom and steadfast integrity. Now, in the midst of this violent upheaval, those memories served as a poignant reminder of what was at stake. His farm, his land, was more than just soil and timber. It was the repository of his ancestors' dreams, the silent testament to the resilience of those who had labored with hope and determination. To see it threatened was to witness the potential erasure of an entire legacy, a legacy that demanded that he stand firm against the tide of destruction. The confrontation that ensued was raw and unrelenting. The Dominion's soldiers, armored in both technology and a chilling certainty of their own righteousness, attacked with an intensity that seemed to shake the very ground beneath Buck's feet. It was a battle fought not with the subtlety of cunning strategies, but with the visceral power of raw defiance. Buck fought with every fiber of his being, his actions fueled not by a desire for personal glory, but by a commitment to honor and a refusal to let cruelty dictate the terms of his life. Each blow he struck was a repudiation of the oppressive forces arrayed against him, a fierce declaration that the value of human dignity was worth every sacrifice. The flames that licked at the remnants of his once proud farmhouse became a symbolic pyre, burning away the vestiges of an old life and making space for the birth of something new, a life defined by unyielding resistance. Amidst the swirling chaos and the acrid smell of smoke, Zurich's transformation became unmistakable. The wounded soldier, whose body had once betrayed the inevitability of defeat, began to stand with a quiet dignity that spoke of an inner strength born of suffering. His eyes, clouded by the weight of his past and the immediacy of his pain, now shone with a defiant spark, a spark that resonated with Buck's own fierce resolve. Together, they formed an unlikely alliance, a bond forged not by convenience, but by a shared understanding that sometimes the most profound acts of resistance require sacrificing everything familiar in order to preserve something far more essential: the sanctity of the human soul. Every shattered beam of wood, every ember drifting into the night, carried with it the echoes of countless sacrifices. The Dominion's ultimatum was more than a command. It was a cruel reminder of the high price that freedom demanded. Buck's internal monologue was a symphony of conflicting emotions, a mingling of sorrow for what was lost, determination for what was to be defended, and a raw, almost painful hope that the future could be rebuilt from the ashes of the past. In the midst of battle, the lines between right and wrong blurred, and every decision carried with it the bitter tang of irreversible loss. Yet in that turbulent space, Buck found clarity. He realized that sometimes the most honest form of defiance is not in the promise of victory, but in the courageous act of standing alone against a tide of despair, even when that stand means watching everything he loves turn to dust. As the night deepened, the relentless assault by the Dominion soldiers continued with a brutal persistence that defied all expectations. The clash of metal and the anguished cries of those caught in the crossfire painted a picture of war that was both timeless and tragically modern. Amid the tumult, Buck's mind drifted to the countless souls who had come before him. Farmers, fathers, and dreamers who had all, in their own ways, stood up against forces far larger than themselves. Their silent sacrifices were woven into the very fabric of his being, a legacy of quiet heroism that refused to be erased by the march of tyranny. With each swing of his weathered arms and every desperate maneuver, Buck was not merely fighting for Zurich or for his farm. He was fighting for the very idea that even in the darkest hours, the human spirit could ignite a flame of hope so powerful that it could defy even the most overwhelming forces of oppression. In the midst of this violent tempest, there were moments, fleeting, almost imperceptible, of tender humanity. During brief pauses in the relentless onslaught, Buck would catch Zurich's gaze, and in that silent exchange, a universe of unspoken understanding passed between them. It was a language built on shared pain and mutual defiance, a promise that no matter how deep the scars, the heart's capacity for compassion would always endure. Zurich's voice, hoarse and trembling with both pain and resolve, occasionally broke through the clamor of battle, recounting memories of a life before the carnage, a life where laughter and light had once filled the spaces between moments. These rare interludes were a balm to Buck's wounded soul, a reminder that amidst the ravages of war, there remained a beauty worth fighting for. The raw honesty of these exchanges transformed the battle into something more than a mere clash of armies. It became a poignant exploration of what it meant to be human in a world intent on erasing that very humanity. As dawn approached, the first hints of light crept over a horizon stained with the remnants of destruction. The battlefield, now eerily quiet save for the crackling of dying embers, bore witness to the cost of defiance. The remnants of Buck's farmhouse, reduced to smoldering ruins, stood as a somber monument to sacrifice. In that quiet aftermath, Buck's thoughts turned inward as he surveyed the devastation with a mix of sorrow and steely determination. Every shattered fragment of wood, every scorched patch of earth, whispered of promises broken and dreams sacrificed, but they also spoke of a relentless spirit that could rise, phoenix-like, from the depths of despair. In those precious moments of stillness, Buck allowed himself to remember the days before the storm, a time when the world seemed simpler, when the future was filled with the promise of quiet contentment rather than the uncertainty of rebellion. He recalled the gentle hum of everyday life, the satisfaction of a hard day's work, and the unspoken bond shared with neighbors who, like him, had quietly tended to their own small corners of the earth. That recollection was bittersweet, a reminder of all that had been lost in the maelstrom of conflict. Yet, it was also a source of strength, a testament to the fact that even when stripped of all its trappings, life held an intrinsic value that could not be extinguished by tyranny. With Zurich's steady presence at his side, Buck began to forge a path through the ruins. Their journey was no longer solely about survival, but about redefining what it meant to live in a world where every step forward was an act of resistance. As they navigated the scarred landscape, every ruined barn, every blackened field, transformed into a silent rallying cry for all those who had ever dared to dream of freedom. The road ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. It was also a canvas on which new hopes could be painted with the bold strokes of defiance and perseverance. Their march was punctuated by moments of introspection and resolve. In quiet glens untouched by the chaos of war, Buck would sometimes pause to feel the pulse of the land beneath his feet, the gentle reminder that nature, despite the ravages of human conflict, continued its eternal cycle of death and rebirth. These fleeting encounters with the enduring spirit of the earth filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. They were moments of communion with a world that, even in its silence, resonated with the promise of a better tomorrow. Zurich, too, found solace in these intervals of calm. As he recounted stories of lost loves and bygone days, his voice softened, revealing the tender vulnerability behind the hardened exterior of a soldier. In those shared silences, their individual burdens merged into a collective strength that emboldened them to face the uncertain horizon. The journey was long and fraught with emotional turbulence. Every step carried with it the ghosts of the past, a past filled with sacrifices made in the name of survival, decisions that had cleaved families and communities apart. Buck's thoughts often wandered to those who had been lost in the fire of rebellion, whose dreams had been consumed by the insatiable flames of oppression. Yet, even as the weight of these memories pressed upon him, there was an unyielding clarity in his purpose. He realized that the true measure of resistance was not found in the absence of pain, but in the courage to embrace that pain and transform it into a force for renewal. The scars borne by the land, much like those etched onto his own weathered skin, were badges of honor, a testament to a life lived in defiance of a world intent on quelling the spirit of its people. As the day unfolded into a tentative dawn, the two travelers found themselves at the edge of a vast, uncharted valley, a place that promised both peril and possibility. The valley, with its rugged terrain and uncertain skies, seemed to mirror the tumult within their own hearts. Yet within that raw, unfiltered uncertainty lay the seeds of transformation. Buck's inner voice, steady and resolute, echoed with the wisdom of generations past, that every ending was but a prelude to a new beginning, and that the embers of rebellion, however dim they might appear in the cold light of day, could ignite a revolution of the spirit. With each cautious step into this unknown expanse, Buck and Zurich reaffirmed their silent pact, a promise that, regardless of the hardships to come, they would carry the flame of resistance with unwavering determination. Their journey was more than a physical passage from the ruins of the past to the promise of the future. It was a pilgrimage of the soul, a quest to reclaim not just what had been lost, but to redefine what it meant to live with honor in a world marred by injustice. Every shattered remnant of the old world they passed served as both a warning and an inspiration, a vivid reminder that true freedom is forged in the crucible of sacrifice, and that the cost of defiance, though immeasurable, was a price worth paying for the sake of preserving one's humanity. As the sun ascended higher, bathing the scarred earth in a hesitant glow, Buck's mind settled into a rhythm of quiet reflection. The memories of past battles, of friends lost and moments of fleeting triumph, wove themselves into the fabric of his determination. The journey ahead was daunting, laden with challenges that would test every ounce of his resolve. Yet it was also a canvas upon which he could paint a future unburdened by the chains of fear and oppression. In the tender moments between clashes and the distant rumble of approaching forces, Buck found strength in the simple act of remembering. The laughter of a child in a long-forgotten village, the warm embrace of a loved one, the steady pulse of life that persisted despite the ravages of war. Zurich, once resigned to the inevitability of defeat, now walked with a quiet purpose that belied the scars on his body. His transformation from a wounded enemy into a steadfast companion was a silent testament to the idea that the true enemy was not the individual, but the system that sought to reduce every soul to a mere cog in a relentless machine. In his occasional murmurs, laden with the weight of regret and hope, there was a subtle promise. A promise that even amidst the ruins, humanity could find a way to rebuild, to rediscover the lost art of compassion. Their intertwined destinies, forged in the crucible of shared adversity, were a living embodiment of the idea that defiance is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. As the day wore on and the shadows retreated before the growing light, the landscape began to reveal its hidden beauty. In the fragile bloom of wildflowers pushing through cracked earth, in the gentle murmur of a stream cutting its way through the valley, Buck saw symbols of renewal. Every element of nature seemed to whisper that even after the fiercest storms, there lay a promise of rebirth, a promise that life, in all its resilient glory, would always find a way to flourish. This realization, profound and stirring, further bolstered his resolve. It was not merely the act of resisting tyranny that defined him, but the recognition that in every ending there exists the potential for a new beginning. With every mile traversed, every step taken on this treacherous path, the narrative of Buck's journey grew richer and more complex. It was a narrative punctuated by moments of excruciating loss and soaring hope, a narrative that resonated with the timeless struggle between submission and defiance. In the soft light of the coming day, Buck's spirit, though battered and scarred, shone with the brilliance of a man who had chosen to embrace the full measure of his humanity. His journey was an unspoken challenge to every oppressive force that sought to dictate the terms of existence, a challenge that reverberated with the courage of countless souls who had dared to dream of freedom against all odds. And so, as the valley opened before them like a vast, unwritten chapter of destiny, Buck and Zurich moved forward with a quiet, determined grace. Their footsteps, echoing softly on the worn path, carried with them the weight of every sacrifice made and every hope kindled in the darkest of times. In the delicate interplay of light and shadow, in the silent spaces between the cacophony of conflict, they found the profound truth that resistance, in its purest form, is an act of love, a love for the lost, the vulnerable, and the promise of a future where the human spirit is never diminished by the forces of tyranny. I end the quiet moments that followed. As the world around them stirred with the tentative promise of a new day, Buck's thoughts turned once more to the legacy of those who had come before him, a legacy not defined by victories on a battlefield, but by the quiet, enduring courage to stand up when every part of one's being urged for retreat. The ruins of his former life, though stark and unyielding in their testimony to loss, were also fertile ground for the seeds of revolution. In that fertile ground, nurtured by the sweat of defiance and the tears of sacrifice, the vision of a better tomorrow began to take shape, a tomorrow where every soul, no matter how battered by life's storms, could rise again with renewed strength and purpose. Their journey, now a tapestry woven with threads of pain, hope, and quiet heroism, extended far beyond the boundaries of that scarred valley. It was a journey that would lead them into realms where the cost of resistance was measured not in the fleeting moments of glory, but in the steady, enduring commitment to preserving the core of one's identity. With each passing day, Buck and Zurich carved a path through adversity, their shared struggles transforming into a powerful narrative that whispered to all who dared to listen, that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, the light of the human spirit could ignite a beacon of hope, a hope that, like a delicate flame in the wind, would never be fully extinguished in the unfolding hours of that uncertain morning, as nature itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of what was to come. The resolve of these two souls shone brighter than ever. The horizon, once a mere boundary between earth and sky, now beckoned as an invitation to redefine destiny, a destiny that was written not in the annals of history, but in the hearts of those who dared to defy fate. Their journey was a living, breathing testament to the idea that true freedom is not granted by the powers,